May call us back into open session. And I'd like to call up Maria Ruiz from Harkness Elementary School. Welcome so much. Thanks for coming here and leading us in our Pledge of Allegiance, which we'll all be standing up for. Whenever you're ready, you can just go ahead.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
Very much. And Member Vang has
Good evening. So I have the chance of introducing Maria. Maria is a 5th grade student from Harkness Elementary. She was nominated by her teacher, Miss Samuels, for being a rising EL student who exhibit great citizenship inside and outside of the classroom. Maria has met or exceeded the standards in English language arts and math for 2 years. She also participated on our Harkness leadership team in 4th grade. Last year, she graduated from speech services after 2 years. Maria is an incredible role model for her classmates and the community, and she shows exemplary work ethic. Congratulations, Maria.
Thank you.
Would you like to say something to us? Give us a little message of encouragement to do a good job for you and whatever else.
Thank you, Ms. Samuels, for the certificate, and thank you, Ms. Breland, for being my 5th grade teacher.
Excellent.
Congratulations.
Miss Gouveia, once you get in, you're the principal. Come on. Come on, you want to come?
Oh, Daryl, seriously.
Hey.
That's what you want your legacy to be.
Too late.
If you're part of Harkness,
Yes, I
can. Yay, congratulations. Congratulations. I know you guys are so proud. You must be so proud.
Mr. Behrens, any announcements?
Yes,
actions?
Mr. President. Only one announcement out of closed session. OAH case number 2017-051366, a special education matter. Settlement was unanimously approved by all 7 board members. That concludes my announcement out of closed session, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to adopt our agenda?
So moved.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? We have an agenda. Now we'll move to Mr. Barrios. Do we have any public comment?
No public comment.
All right, very well. I think we need to have something read that was missing from our agenda. But our board member, please, Ms.
This meeting of the Sacramento City School Board is being recorded in its entirety and will be cablecast on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel on Comcast, Consolidated Communications, and AT&T Uverse. Today's meeting will air Sunday, October 8th at 6 p.m., Monday, October 9th at 12 p.m., and webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. We welcome members of the audience to address the board. Please fill out a speaker form located in the back of the community room and give it to our communications representative prior to the conclusion of the item's presentation. Please speak into the microphone when addressing the board and state your name for the record. Please limit comments during public comment to items that are not on the agenda. If you do comment on an item that is on the agenda, we ask that you please defer your comments until your item comes up on the agenda. Please also turn off your cell phones or place them on silent or vibrate. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Nguyen. Now we will move into our public hearing, 8.1. Mr. Turkey, or whichever staff member is going to be presenting on 8.1. Resolution 2960. Or we can, yeah, why don't we move to, Iris, are you going to? Madam Doctor, come on up.
So good evening, Board President Hansen, Board Members, Superintendent Aguilar. My name is Iris Taylor. I'm the Chief Academic Officer. And tonight I'm here to present to you the district's compliance with the Pupil Textbook and Instructional Materials Incentive Program Act. So this act requires that by the 8th week of school that we certify that all of our students have sufficient textbooks and instructional materials that are consistent with cycles of curriculum frameworks adopted by the State Board of Ed. These are the steps that we take to ensure that there's sufficiency. So every year we conduct a survey to our sites to determine textbook needs. And then we redistribute surplus textbooks to sites, order additional textbooks, and then we verify that materials are in sites. Resolution 2905, Certification of Textbook and Instructional Material Sufficiencies. These are for our core subject areas, including English Language Arts, Mathematics, History, Social Science, English Language Development, and Science, as well as for science laboratory equipment. These are the sites that we have gone through, some of them through our Williams review process to determine sufficiency. There are middle school sites, and then our high school sites. And so our request is that you approve Resolution 2960 on certifying sufficiency of textbooks. We'll take questions after public comment.
Do we have any public comment on this item?
Yes, we do. Actually, no, we don't. That's on the next item.
Okay. I have one of my board members' buttons pressed. Member Bang, and you're finished with your comments. Mr. Wu.
Thank you, President Hansen. Mr. Turkey, Dr. Taylor, we have identified in our textbook budget for 2017-2018, a total of less than 600,000. And then total set aside for, I think I saw someplace, academic budget was $1 million?
So in the funds, the total allocation is about 1.8, and we've expended about 580,000. Yes.
So from time to time, this board hears public comments regarding the insufficiency of textbooks. And I wonder how this resolution squares with the comments that, textbooks are 20 years old, or, they're out of date, or I'm just wondering, because all the schools that we have there indicate that there are sufficient textbooks, but from time to time we even get teachers before us who are telling us that their textbooks are dated.
Correct. So the textbooks that we currently have versus the materials that are coming in, some of those materials, like we are working to purchase new textbooks within the cycles of state adoption that the state has established. And I don't know if you recall, but during the economic downturn, the state suspended cycles of adoptions, right? So we're now back in cycles of adoption, and so we're slowly bringing our materials up to align with standards adoption. So our latest have been math and ELA, and so we have a math adoption, which we adopted in 2014. ELA we're doing this year. And so our next adoption cycle that the state has put forward is science. And so we'll look to do science and then history, social science, foreign language. So we're doing it in accord with new adoption. So our materials, some of them are older because new standards have not been adopted. And so what we do is we replenish, if they're worn, we replenish, but we are in the process of adopting new materials.
So the problem is basically we're subject to the state's schedule about new textbooks.
Yeah, that's how we're determining what comes next, so to speak.
And then one other question is, maybe this is for Gerardo, but I seem to recall that we set aside in the budget some $20 million for textbooks.
Yeah, that is for books and supplies, and that includes not just textbooks, but that includes all items that under the California School Accounting Manual filed into books and supplies, but that includes transportation costs, tires, oil, non-instructional materials. So the $21 million includes all the costs, not just textbooks.
Okay, so our school buses and our
any equipment that costs greater than $500 is included in there. So that's, I guess that description is not very user friendly because if somebody just
not very accurate as to what we actually spend the money on.
But that's we need to call it out. Yeah, you're welcome.
Member Ryan.
Thank you, President Hansen. Thank you for your comments, Board Member Wu. I think for the average parent, terms like sufficiency and sufficient status on textbooks are probably very alien and difficult to decipher. And so I think it would be helpful to have a sense from you, Iris, what is the definition of sufficient? We basically have a ranking of all of these schools that have met the definition of sufficient. Don't know what that definition is, although you've said that it is subject to aligning with the state level adoption of new standards.
And it's also, that, each student has materials in hand and that they are, again, aligned with standards. Yeah.
So a school site could be deemed as having sufficient textbooks, but in fact have a history book that is 20 years ago published.
That is possible. What we've tried to do in instances like that, if there hasn't been an adoption, is supplement with other materials.
And compliance with the Williams Act does not require that they have newer textbooks that in fact are intact and not falling apart, rather that they are in line with the state level adoption of new standards.
Yes, and that they need to be in good working order as well.
So can I ask you, thank you, I really appreciate that clarification. How are we communicating to our parents that we actually have a process that we're in queue for updating our textbooks so that our parents who are rightfully upset and confused when they see that a textbook that their child is bringing home is either falling apart or 10 years or more older, and they actually know that there is a path forward to ensure that we get adequate textbooks before them.
Yes, and that's a very a great suggestion. We currently kind of rely on our sites to do that, but I think what you're alluding to is just the need for a more systemic way of communicating that out to our families, our communities, and even to our sites, that there's a process by which they can return worn materials and receive new ones.
Can I make that request that
Yes.
we move on that right now? I think that that's very helpful as parents come before us on a regular basis. It's also very helpful for you to simplify the language and the outreach mechanism for ensuring that we have those textbooks exchanged where possible.
Yes, thank you.
Member Pritchett?
Thank you. I just wanted to weigh in what Member Ryan was just asking about, and I'm really surprised to see West Campus, and I'm just picking on one school, and it's because we did have a parent come to our board meeting that had a stack full of textbooks that came from their child, right, that were falling apart. And I know that you said that the parents can go and return them and get, sufficient textbooks, but it seems to me that the school site should be checking to see if they're in good working order prior to them being released to a student to be sent home. Because once they're sent home, they're stuck in the child's room, especially at a high school level. I remember my kids being in high school, and I don't think I've ever seen their textbooks because they were in their bedroom studying or in the office studying, right? And I wasn't bothering them. I wasn't in there inspecting their textbooks. So I would like to ask that we ask our school sites to make sure that these textbooks are in good working order before they're released to the students.
Yes. So to clarify, we do. It's the process by which they then return those to our library textbook services office so that additional, refreshed materials can be provided. That's the communication piece. Okay. So if there's sites that have those worn books, it's like letting them know you can return those to library textbook services and get new ones. Yes, but we do ask them to certify.
So the parent that came to us from West Campus, do you think that was a rarity?
No, I don't. I mean, the fact that the parent came, I would say, it's our communication to the sites about the process by which that parent can return that book to the site, and the teacher has, losing my words, a better set of materials for them. It may not be an up-to-date version, but it's, we can replace worn textbooks. And the funding that's outlined in the executive summary is for that purpose.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I won't try to go over too much of what's already been said, but it's pretty clear that the definition of sufficient is really not very sufficient. So it doesn't really say very much. And I assume we're just kind of, we need to do this because we've been mandated by the state legislature to pass this once a year and say everything's sufficient. I think it would be valuable for us to, for us and then for the public that, I don't know if there's expiration dates on textbooks, how what the process is for making sure that they indeed are, hopefully they're better than sufficient. And it would be great to have, presentable, textbooks that are actually valuable for the students. Did they have expiration dates, or is there some kind of a regular process that they're examined?
Yes. So the timing of them is more around, in terms of ensuring the up-to-dateness is around the cycle of standards adoption. However, that does not preclude a district from purchasing textbooks whenever it's able to purchase textbooks. So it's more of a prioritization of funding to support the purchase of textbooks. So similar to the way that the board approved the adoption of ELD materials for this year, subsequent purchases of materials just requires board approval, and then we move forward to adopt.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then my last comment is kind of going back to Gerardo, just following up on Member Wu's comment. Because of the budget item of where this is placed, it looks like we just have $20 million for textbooks. Maybe what we should consider in one of our budget committee hearings is looking at breaking up that item so it more accurately reflects what's in there. So if there's only $1 or $2 million a year in textbooks or whatever the number is, and some of it's for other items, that we can break that up so when the public looks at that item, they understand, and it makes it easier for us to understand too what's really included in there.
We can do that. Yeah.
I think that'd be valuable.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments from the board? I don't see any, so this is an action item. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed or abstained? Resolution passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will move to Ms. Allen. Let me ask one. I apologize. We had a late submission of a public comment. Let me ask Mr. Barrios to call up that one person.
Danke Stroop. Danke. Oh, like German. Thank you.
Welcome.
All right. So this is my first time coming to a board meeting, so I don't really know how it works. I don't know if I'm supposed to address you guys, but I'm Donka Straub, and I am here. I'm a senior at John F. Kennedy, and I'm here on behalf of the student body, voicing our concerns about our student activities and the lack of communication between us and our admin. At the beginning of the school year, many rumors were going around concerning our student life. Between myself, student government, and some staff members, we have come to learn which activities we have lost and how come, and we have gotten no explanation for why. And that is really frustrating to a lot of the students because all of these changes has been made this year. And so it's a really sudden change. And so what they have, I guess, sort of removed is they've taken away Winter Rally. And it's a rally. And they will not talk to student government. Our principal, Mr. Van Hatten, has not signed our student government constitution. The admin will not meet with anybody about any of the loss of our activities. And we recently found out that our Disneyland grad night, I don't know, well, obviously. So normally, all Kennedy always goes with a bunch of other schools to Disneyland. And because under the new student director, Ms. Shintaku, we have lost that because she was late submitting it. So we have to go by ourselves. Our school will be the only school at Disneyland. And that's a part of, our memories that everyone always looks forward to, that one night from midnight to 6 in the morning, all seniors. And especially considering it's our senior year, it's really important to us and other students at the school, other classes. They worry about, what their senior year and what their high school, life is going to look like.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And Member Wu is your representative, and he would like to speak with you for a moment. And probably Nathaniel can also pass some information. Thank you for coming. You did a fine job. And importantly, you stayed right under your time, so very much appreciated. Now we will go to item 8.2.
So good evening, President Hansen, members of the board, and Superintendent Aguilar. Tonight we're holding a public hearing, which is to submit a waiver request to the California Department of Education for a long-term lease of the old Marshall School site. This has been a project on the books for quite a long time. The most recent activity by the board was in November of 2016, where you authorized staff to begin negotiations with the successful proposer, a developer team of Milcavero Bardis. Part of that process is to negotiate what we call an exclusive negotiations agreement, where we kind of work out what the terms might be between the two parties. And another part of that is we needed to submit a waiver to the State Board of Education to ask them to let us use the process that we went through, which was a highly collaborative, very much involved with community, an RFP process. The Marshall New Era folks were very much involved with this and will continue to be involved with this as we move forward. If we did it the statutory way, we would be under a sealed bid, low bid, no input from the community. We just didn't feel like that was the best way to go about it, approaching this beautiful historic site. So we're requesting the waiver. We wanted to do that before we officially entered into the exclusive negotiations agreement timeline, because we don't know necessarily what the State Board of Ed is going to do. We anticipate approval of the waiver, but we really don't know. And the district, I don't believe, has gone through this process before, so this is kind of new for all of us. So part of the requirements of the waiver is to meet with all the bargaining units, which I've done. 3 of them gave me an affirmative. We did not hear back from the other bargaining unit. Again, doesn't stop us from submitting. It's just something that we would have to report to the State Board of Ed with the waiver form. So that's pretty much it, unless you want more history on the whole Marshall process, but we would need to open a public hearing. So.
Well, do we have any public comment on this item?
Yes, we do. You could come up in order when you hear your name. Consuelo Hernandez, Tom Quasenbarth, Luis Demas, Dominic Mogavero, and Matthew Valine.
Hi, good evening. My name is Consuelo Hernandez. I'm the Chief of Staff for Councilmember Steve Hansen. I'm pleased to be here tonight. I want to thank you for bringing this item forward. We've been working with our Marshall New Era residents on this site. It's an iconic building that unfortunately has been vacant for a good amount of time. It's rapidly deteriorating. The city has issues with graffiti, with trash. We've been able to work successfully with the district to move forward other blighted buildings. So we do appreciate the continued progress on this and encourage you to keep this moving. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, and send our best to the councilman.
Good evening, Tom Quasenbarth, board member of the Marshall New Era Neighborhood Association. Feels a little bit like Groundhog Day, the movie. We've been nudging the school board here for a couple of years now, and we really appreciate the efforts of the board and the staff. We, as a neighborhood association, strongly support the redevelopment of this building. It's an iconic building, as you just heard, 100 years old. As a neighbor and someone who lives down the block, it really is teetering on the brink of becoming a blighted condition, and so something really needs to be done. We've urged urgency for a while now. We were involved in the process last year, which the school board staff undertook. Myself and one other board member sat on the selection committee and helped the board come to a unanimous recommendation to move forward with one of the three proposals that were submitted. We continue to strongly support the vision that's outlined by the winning developer team, Mogavera Bardis Group, to rehab the building and to put new housing adjacent to the building. As everyone knows, we're in the midst of a severe housing shortage in this area, and the region really needs every housing unit planned. So we, again, strongly urge you to support the proposal as such and to expedite the waiver process and the negotiation agreement as much as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Louis Demas. I have two close associations with the Marshall School. One is I live in a house 2 blocks away from it, built in 1939, which my parents built, my immigrant parents, and I was built the same year. And we moved in there in 1939. 1944, I started attending Marshall School and attended there for 7 years, and my older siblings also attended Marshall. So I have a very fond remembrance of the building. And it's, you know, when you see the commercials with the Indian crying when he sees the environment despoiled, that's how I get when I see Marshall in the deteriorating state that it had. It was a wonderful place to attend school, and I do everything, I urge everything that the board can do to move this along and to get the restoration it deserves. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. My name is Matt Valine, and I'm a resident at 2801 G Street, which is directly across from Marshall School. And I look forward to the rejuvenated activity at the currently vacant Marshall School. And I support any reasonable action that speeds up the completion of the project. Marshall School is the anchor of our neighborhood, and the timing of the completion is a priority to the neighbors, and I appreciate your action on this matter.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dominic Mogavero. I'm here on behalf of Mogavero Architects and Bardis Homes. We're the selected development entity. Just want to let you know we've really appreciated all of the hard work and all the feedback we've gotten from the neighborhood so far. We remain committed to the project and to our original design proposal, and we're excited and ready to get started whenever it's an opportunity for us to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Patty Wade. I'm an interested member of the public. I did participate in the process to identify the future use of Marshall School. And I'm here for a couple of reasons. One, to thank you for the process. Secondly, I suggested the use of Marshall School as senior co-housing, and I love the idea of co-housing. I would encourage the school board to alter my and maybe others' idea to take the senior off the housing and allow it to be utilized by any interested folks, not necessarily seniors. I think a vital community includes all sorts of people, not just seniors. And if there is a future role, I'm sure that you will let us know, because I would be interested in further participation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, no further comment. Now we'll go to board members' questions and comments. Board Member Cochran.
Thank you. So I would like to thank staff and the Facilities Committee particularly. This has been a sticky situation because there's so many entities involved, State of California and our school district, that it took some time to untangle it, but it was a steady progress step by step. So thank you, Facilities, and also thank you to the Facilities Committee. I am the representative for Marshall School on the school board here, trustee area, and I am also an active member in my neighborhood and with my neighborhood association. And I have watched Marshall New Era work indefatigably to get this project moving forward. And I'd like to say how much I appreciate the emails, how much I appreciate the input and the prodding to make sure that it happens. I am very glad that it's moving forward. It still is going to take some time and a lot of community input. And believe it, you will be part of what is happening going forward. And if anytime you feel like you're not getting enough information, reach out to me. Or if you're not a participant, reach out to me and I'll make sure to correct that. Thank you very much, and I'm excited too.
Member Wu.
Thank you, President Hansen. I want to concur with my colleague, but I think that passing this resolution will allow the district to have more control over the destiny of the site rather than leaving it up to the whims of the state. So I'm going to move the acceptance of this and hope that my colleagues will follow me.
Any other folks? I'll just say, let me add that, during my time on the school board, I've learned that patience is a virtue, and that's something that we've certainly had to experience here. I really appreciate everyone's persistence and perseverance. This is something that's been new for staff, it's been new for the board, and before we started grappling with this, the school had just been, locked up and nothing was happening at all. So I know that it's moved slow. Unfortunately, that's kind of the box that we're stuck in with government and bureaucracy, but by the slow, steady pressure that all of us are applying, it's moving forward. So the community has been great partners, and I appreciate the positive approach that has been taken. It's made it easier for all of us. This is a big piece. Let me ask a question, is there an opportunity for us do we present when we go to the State Board of Education? Do you know what the process is, or do we
I
just
have no
file?
clue. I will find out and make sure I let the board know.
You will have an opportunity to present unless it's approved on the consent calendar. So I think it's important to present on this item.
Yeah, well, I know a couple of the board members, the state board members, so I'd be happy to join you in participating there and supporting this project if this is approved tonight. Maybe we can, I think it'd be nice just to have it on the consent calendar, frankly, so we can just make it simple, but we can cross that bridge when we get there. So I heard a motion and a second. Yes, this is a conference and an action item, so On the first action, to move it from conference to an action, I heard a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstain. Now we're on the action. Do I have Member Cochran moves the action and a second by Mr. Wu. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstain. The resolution passes.
Thank you.
So thank you for moving us one step further on the process. Stay tuned. Okay, we will move now to item 9.1. Bring back Dr. Taylor. And Mr. Harris is joining us as well. Welcome.
Good evening, Board President Hansen, board members, and Superintendent Aguilar. It's my pleasure tonight to share with you an overview of the California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress, or otherwise known as CASP results, the Smarter Balance exams for the state of California. In terms of tonight's presentation, we'll start off with an overview of the Smarter Balance exam, and then talk about the data within our system. And then Dr. Taylor will provide an overview of some of the action planning that's already underway to address some of the gaps that we'll discuss this evening. And so just as a grounding for this presentation, I think it's always important to come back to our Sacramento City core value as we recognize that our system is inequitable by design and we work vigilantly to confront and interrupt inequities. Tonight we're going to talk about some of those inequities as it relates to student performance on the Smarter Balance exams, and we'll also equally important, or more importantly, talk about the ways that we're looking to address some of those gaps. Foundational to this work remains the equity, access, and social justice guiding principle. And so ultimately, as we think about the ways in which we'll discuss not only the data that we'll see this evening, but also how we'll take action to address it, you'll see planning that really creates conditions, change conditions in the present, and enforces the equity and access and social justice guiding principle in terms of giving students an equal opportunity to graduate with the greatest number of post-secondary choices from the widest array of options. This definition you got an extensive overview of in last board meeting during the workshop by the superintendent, so I'm not looking to, of course, repeat that here. But what's really important, I think, to take away as we think about defining equity, access, and social justice is this notion of respecting the data and establishing an element of continuous improvement and accountability framework. Again, as we talk about the data this evening, you'll see gaps in students' performance, but for the system, that is an opportunity for us to think about improvement and then obviously hold ourselves accountable for changing those conditions for all of our students. The SBAC is an annual exam, and so this slide just simply provides an overview of the annual cycle of the work in terms of the testing accommodations for our students, the training that goes forward in terms of prepping for the exam, and then, of course, the testing window, which comes during the spring semester. In terms of the results, you can see there's kind of 3 stages in terms of the preliminary results, the final level of results, and then actually, as all of y'all know in the room, the final public release of the results was just last week. And so while it's an annual exam, we've had an opportunity to present it to you in a relatively timely manner. The SBAC itself actually breaks into 2 major subject areas, English language arts and math. The grades that are tested are grades 3 through 8 and then 11th grade. And then you can see basically in terms of the performance levels, there are 4, but really they break into kind of 2 broad categories. One category is the students being at or above grade level, that's the standard met and standard exceeded. And then the 2 categories of students being below grade level, which are reflected in standard not met and standard nearly met. Then as we think about English language arts, it really breaks into, again, 4 other claim areas in terms of reading, writing, listening, and of course research and inquiry. And then math breaks into other 3 claim areas as well, concepts and procedures, problem solving, and communicating reasoning. So over the next several slides, we'll talk about the notion of seeing the system to some degree with a focus on looking at the variation in what we see, but equally important and most important, seeing the student gaps that I alluded to earlier. So as we think about Sacramento City in the context of Sacramento County and State of California, we can see our performance on ELA is below. And that trend remains also true with the math results as well. As we look at the peer group of districts, both regionally and then also districts that we formally collaborate with, you can see in terms of the English language arts performance, Sacramento City is basically kind of in the lower middle, if you will. So you can see, as you look at the chart here, you can see it's on the left-hand side. As we look at math, Sacramento City is basically in the middle to some degree, to a large degree. You could say the solid middle. And so, again, lots of opportunity for us to learn with some of our, not just regional partners, but some of the statewide districts that we partner with on an ongoing basis. And as we look internally to the district's results itself by grade level, you can see as we look at the results, ELA, 11th grade actually is the highest performing grade. And you can see obviously there is some variability as we look across the tested grade levels. In math, actually, the trend kind of changes where we see kind of more grades norming against each other, but third grade being the highest in the context in terms of math. Then look at our subgroup data. Many of you have spoken about this through various presentations, and so we talked about it in our graduation presentation as well. We can see definitely significant distance in the students on grade level as we go from African American to Filipino and white. Then that trend basically holds both in ELA and math. And then actually, as the board has requested, we have actually disaggregated our Asian subgroup as well, both in ELA and math. And there you can see a significant variation performance, or frankly, gap as well, as we look at our Asian subgroups. From a programming perspective, I mean, these results, obviously are unacceptable across the board in terms of whether English learner, foster youth, or special education. The results are significantly low relative to the district average. And so we recognize as a system, this is significant work for us to address. And again, both that pattern holds both in English language arts and in math. So this slide is meant to really, take the context of the data and not just simply report it, but also give a sense of, as the superintendent shared, as the district looks to implement not only the guiding principle, but also a performance and target action index. This slide is really meant to give kind of a sense of the notion of looking at the data through multiple lenses. So, for example, if you look on the left, we're comparing now a cohort of students and looking at the performance year over year. 2015-16 to 2016-17. And so if I point you to the number on there that is green, that is 11 or 1,191, what that number communicates is that those students scored in 2015-2016 standard not met. The reason that number is colored is that actually in 2016-2017, those students actually scored nearly met. And so it's meant to give a sense of the shift, if you will. Conversely, obviously, if you look at the 721, that speaks to the notion of students who scored standard met in 2015-16 and then scored standard nearly met in 2016-2017. And then those numbers that are basically in the white box, so for example, the 16-14, basically just speaks to students who basically scored at the same level year over year. And so for us as a system, that those become important numbers for us to look at, particularly trying to understand where students have slipped, and certainly really trying to study those cases which students grew to make sure that we're trying to unpack the practices that led to that. And so we have this slide obviously both for ELA and for math. And so again, this slide basically gives you a sense of retention, slippage, and then growth. With that, I'll transition the presentation to Dr. Taylor, who's going to take you now through really the application of the Equity and Access Social Justice Guiding Principle.
So good evening, Board President Hansen, members of the board, Superintendent Aguilar. As we continue our presentation on student achievement to discuss how we're changing conditions in the present, I'd like to briefly review with you our equity, access, and social justice commitments that were shared at the previous board meeting as well. These commitments resonate through what you will hear we are currently doing under Superintendent Aguilar's leadership to change conditions in the present, both prior to and since receiving this data. First, we are fully committed to both collaborating with our teachers and supporting them to provide great teaching to our students every day. We recognize that they are closest to the students, they are engaged with them daily, and are able to have the greatest impact on student learning. As we work to create a data-driven culture, we're committed to treating data with the utmost respect because we recognize that behind every numerator is a child, and it's our responsibility to that student's family, and anyone who loves that student to know that student by name and by need. In our presentation tonight and our use of data, we will focus greater attention on the outcomes we're producing than those that we are hoping to achieve. And as you've seen, we have shared with you the outcomes that we're actually achieving. We recognize that there are external circumstances that impact students' lives, but we want to treat those circumstances as assets to help them reach their goals and their dreams. And finally, we seek to change conditions in the present as opposed to perseverating over what we would have done, what we could have done, what we should have done had we monitored the data or used it differently. So this graphic was also shared at the previous board meeting, and we share it with you to show the theory of change that we are currently working on. First, I want to focus you in the center, and Mr. Harris outlined our equity, access, and guiding principle, which is at the core of the theory of change. As you work outwards, you'll see the phrase changing conditions in the present when conditions are ever changing, recognizing that we have to continuously be flexible to support our students. And then I want to focus your eyes into the color. So you'll see in red, blue, purple, and green, those are the areas that we will highlight tonight. How we are working to, in what we call invade each other's space, to change conditions around logistics and operations, supervision and evaluation, curriculum instruction, and professional learning. So I'll start with logistics and operations. We are building and beginning to utilize and learn a very robust data system that is allowing us to better monitor and track, that will allow us to better track and monitor student performance. Some of this was shared with you by Superintendent Aguilar at our last workshop, where you were seeing the A through G monitoring and effects that were happening. We've also identified a set of priority elements for the 2017-18 school year that we will begin to monitor and track. These elements have already been, served to provide focused direction for us, and we will add additional elements each subsequent years. So here you'll see what those elements are. And what I like to just point out is that the first element, English learner redesignation, is a shared focus across our elementary, our middle, and our high schools. And just reflecting on the data that you previously saw around English learner performance, I think you'll understand why that is a focus across. Reading by third grade for elementary school as well as middle school readiness. And then at the middle school level, they'll focus on high school readiness, and at the high school level, graduation and A through G completion. In the area of supervision and evaluation, we've made some significant changes under Superintendent Aguilar's leadership. We've realigned our central office staff to place a greater emphasis and importance on teaching and learning. Two significant changes have occurred. The first is shifting the title and the focus of the work of our principal supervisors. You've known them as area assistant superintendents. We have changed their titles to instructional assistant superintendents to emphasize the instructional leadership and supportive instructional leaderships that they will provide. This change was also meant to operationalize the idea of sharing space and the overlap of the tenants that you see outlined in blue, purple, green, and red. So the principal supervisors have moved under the supervision of the academic office in order to provide greater collaboration across the academic supports as well as the supervision of principals. The second change is among our principals themselves, which we have now organized into regional networks that have a common instructional focus, which is EL redesignation. In the area of curriculum and instruction, we continue to work on and develop our math and ELA curriculum maps. As previously mentioned, we have adopted math instructional materials in 2014, and we're currently piloting and will adopt ELA, ELD instructional materials this school year for implementation in the 2018-19 school year. We are providing alternative supplemental education services or interventions and supports to our lowest performing students and our lowest performing schools. And finally, last January, we formed an assessment committee with our collective bargaining partners consisting of district leadership, SCTA, and UPE. And that committee continues to meet to define and identify assessments that can be used to monitor student progress and growth. In the area of professional learning is a major linchpin in the work, and we're actively engaged in working to build the capacity of our teachers and our leaders. We've had a host of summer professional learning in the areas of English language arts, English language development, special education, and social emotional learning, as well as in math and science. We've deployed instructional coaches to support our teachers through our training specialists, which include both math, ELA, ELD, and science, and a cadre of inclusive practice coaches who support with inclusive practices with special education and general education teachers. We're building the capacity of our principals regarding the priority elements that we previously mentioned, with monthly sessions that are facilitated by our superintendent, as well as myself, Mr. Harris, our instructional assistant superintendents, who are all working to learn as well as improve the learning of our leaders. We've also been engaged in collaborating with our family and community engagement office through the activities that you see outlined on the slide, including our parent information exchange, our APTT, our academic parent-teacher teams, through the Parent Leadership Pathways program, as well as family literacy nights, and a focus on Common Core implementation with our parent advisory groups. So our next steps. We'll continue to work with our labor partners to identify assessments to inform a data system, because we recognize that this is critical to monitor student progress. We'll continue to assess and refine professional learning and instructional supports for our teachers and leaders, and expand and continue to improve the systems for providing interventions and supports for our students. And finally, continue to explore avenues to engage and provide workshops and learning, increasing understanding of our parents around the demands of the Common Core state standards. So with that, we'll take questions, and then, we'll take public comment and return for questions.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this item?
One public comment from Carl Pinkston.
Pinkston, come on down.
Carl Pinkston from the Black Parallel School Board. Thank you this evening. I just wanted to preface by simply saying that in 2009, my graphic is taking your data and really taking a look at it, because what you were presented was a cursory presentation of what's really going on here. In 2009, we documented that it would take 42 years to close the achievement gap. That was in 2009. In 2011, we came back here and we said it would take 75 years to close the achievement gap. Based on this current data, it says we will never close the achievement gap because the African American test scores drop by 1% in the negative, which means we're not improving. It is actually getting worse. And so the thing that one of the things that I really wanted to bring home to you is that I think what is being proposed as a way of addressing this issue is that you need to begin to have an intervention plan, not more data. I heard the data. I've seen the data. We've had that data will solve the problem. We need a plan, a crisis plan now. We need a crisis plan that will basically address the issue of the test scores and the quality of learning of African American students in this district. The Sacramento Bee identified Leah Tata Floyd as one of your schools that is not doing well, which is a predominantly African American student of color school. You're in a crisis, y'all. Your house is burning. It is time that you begin to relook at and do something qualitatively different. The Black Parallel School Board is willing to work with you as well as other organizations to create a committee, a task force. Fresno Unified School District has a task force for African American achievement. San Francisco, Oakland. It is time that Sacramento City Unified School District do likewise. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, no further public comment. Okay, let me go to board members' comment. Member Pritchett.
Thank you, President Hansen, and thank you, Mr. Pinkston, for your comments, and thank you for being such a great advocate. I do want to request, based on those comments, and we had an initiative from a prior superintendent regarding priority schools. And I would like to request the superintendent to start reviewing the priority schools and seeing how these are working out and then report back to the board and maybe creating the committee to look at these issues. I only have one question for you guys, and it's really quick. It's regarding the family empowerment part of your presentation. I think it goes without saying learning starts at home, right? And I know that you had said that you're working with the PI groups and the APTT groups and the parent leadership pathways and the family literacy nights. But my question to you is, does that reach all of our school sites with those groups?
No, it doesn't. It reaches the parents that are involved in those groups. The exception being the family literacy nights have a wider reach because those occur out at the sites.
So how can we help reach out to all these? Because we can't just have small areas that have advocates, right? So it's going to take us to help. So you don't have to tell me now how we can help because I'm putting you on the spot. I see that look. But you got to come and tell us, how can we help? How can we start getting the word out? Thank you.
Member Ryan.
Thank you, President Hansen. I have a few questions and points that I want to raise this evening. I appreciate the hard work that the team has done. I know that this has been a tremendous undertaking in a short period of time. So thank you for the intentionality with which you've done this work. I recognize that, first putting in the data systems and recognizing the lack of processes for moving forward with an ambitious agenda is key, and I think that you've begun to put much of that in place. So on slide 6, there is under testing windows, I have a copy that says the testing windows were April, May, And I think that you showed the testing windows as March, April. And I'm just curious as to which one was correct.
The one on the presentation, we apologize. We
So-
realized we had missed a month in the.
Okay, no, that's fine. So, so the March, April was incorrect, and the testing window is March to May. Got it. So I'm curious, what testing and assessments are going on prior to that spring testing cycle?
So prior to the spring testing cycle, we primarily do any assessments that are required by the state, such as CELT. But we currently don't have a system of assessing on system-wide outside of the SBAC window to monitor student progress.
Okay, so I want to talk about that a bit more and get a better sense of why. I also want to ask, and we'll go back to that question, I'm looking at slide 7, and under slide 7, you talk about the SBAC subject areas and identify the English language arts testing and the mathematics testing as being grades 3 through 8 and 11, and then once again 3 through 8 and 11. So my question is, if we are in fact saying that lifetime achievement, ability to be successful, all of these correlations with upward economic mobility, college going, et cetera, will occur by reading at grade level in 3rd grade, what is happening to assess whether or not students are on track in kindergarten, 1st grade, and 2nd grade prior to this key benchmark?
Yes, so this is an area of work, absolutely, and we've inventoried. Currently, it's site specific. So individual sites are administering a host of assessments. We've inventoried them to see, what types of assessments are you offering at each grade level. Where we want to head and where we need to head is common assessments across grade levels so that we can say, using a common measure, our 1st graders are reading like this. And so that's the work of the assessment committee that we have formed with SCTA, with UPE, with district staff to move in that direction. We're not there yet, but that is where we want to get to. It's critical that we get there. Otherwise, we will not be able to monitor student progress.
Yeah, I'm very concerned to learn that there are myriad assessments that are occurring from school site to school site. I think we need to figure out what works, what will get us a greater understanding of student outcomes, and work with our labor partners to get there. I will tell you, so much of what was shared tonight is deeply personal to me. My daughter, when she entered Sac City Unified and was well into her 1st semester at one of our elementary schools, was reading below grade level and struggling, and I did not learn that in fact she was not meeting the minimum academic benchmarks until January. Now you can imagine the lost learning opportunities between September and January as a result of the fact that there wasn't an assessment going on that could really empower me as a parent with the gaps in my daughter's learning. And that's something that we've struggled with since. A couple other items I want to touch upon and then get back to this final question. I'm very appreciative of the fact that on slide 27 you talk about the focus on English learner redesignation. I think it was made apparently clear that we have many English language learners that have mastery and for whatever reason are not being redesignated, and I think that that is an atrocity to say the least, and so that we could make this a priority to ensure that that's righted is huge for me, as well as obviously these other key benchmarks and A through G completion being the goal for students across the district. When you talk about some of the work that's been done around reorganization, I'm grateful for that. And I'm also grateful for the fact that not only have we moved to take our assistant area superintendents under the realm of instructional leadership, which is what I think is so necessary at this moment in time, but, I would like to point out we have a superintendent who is doing monthly principal meetings, facilitating trainings, and I've been hearing wonderful feedback from my principals. And, I want to underscore that this is an unusual practice, but certainly allows for buy-in at a much greater level. And so I'm appreciative that that's been happening. I, too, had a question around the parent empowerment. What does focus on Common Core implementation look like with parent groups? I have to tell you, I hear from parents on almost a weekly basis how challenging it is to understand how to support our kids in mastering Common Core. I even struggle with that at home as well. It's just a new way of learning that is new to many of us. And so I would love to see a strategy developed for meeting parents outside of these key groups that you've identified, because I think it's a missed opportunity unless we're penetrating the school sites at a deeper level and the parents there. I want to speak to Carl Pinkston's comments. I have to tell you, Carl, I feel your sense of urgency. I have lost too many nights of sleep over the last 6 months, and I am feeling like we can and should be doing more, and frankly, disillusioned at a level that I haven't in many years, my 3 years on the school board included. We have lost a series of young, primarily African-American males in my community, and I know that there is a direct correlation between academic achievement and a feeling of hope that there is something beyond K-12, that there is a future for our young students of color and their ability to really make it out of poverty. And I'm seeing also stay away from violent activities and make choices that will allow them to reach their greatest potential. And so when I hear community members saying we're in crisis, there's a sense of urgency that we need to act with. We appreciate the graduation task force, but if our population that is struggling the most is our Black and brown students, if they are falling behind at levels that we believe are perhaps going to be extremely challenging, if ever accomplishable in terms of closing those opportunity gaps, we need to be doing more. And I want to hear, as part of the graduation task force, an articulated vision for meeting the needs of African American students and other marginalized populations, but African American students, because we see the greatest opportunity gap, should be a focused area. And I'm sorry to say that we're talking about this years after continuing to see a spiraling decline. And so I would look to you to do that. And so then finally, back to the question about working with our labor partners to identify assessments, to inform the data system, to monitor progress. What does that look like? Why don't we have assessment tools in place if we think that that is going to be absolutely pivotal to student success?
So that does look like just continuous engagement around the types of assessments, the purpose of assessments. We want our assessments to be Common Core aligned. We want them to be robust. We want them to be very rigorous assessments. And so there's just been a series of dialogues around what does that look like. There are an array of ways that we can go with an assessment, with assessments. And so we're just trying to hone in on, what works best for our system.
So thank you, Dr. Taylor. So just to close out my comments, I will say, as I think my board members know, I am feeling this urgency. I am feeling like we are failing students day in, day out, and it's unconscionable. And I appreciate the engagement and dialogue over the assessments, but I would urge action in a timely fashion, because if this is pushed out another year or two, it's a year or two of missed opportunity to meet the needs of kids who are desperately looking to us to lead now.
Thank you.
Member Wu.
Thank you, President Hansen, and I wholeheartedly agree with my colleagues. I'm going to suggest something unusual for consideration. As Superintendent has stated previously, each student has a face, and I'm going to take that the next step, and I'm going to suggest that each student has a parent or a guardian. And in looking at family empowerment, when we're changing the dynamic of the discussion, for example, when we identify students who may not have the opportunity to go to Cal State or UC because they had an early poor grade, but they're not now starting to succeed. And we're telling them that you have to make this up so that you can give yourself that opportunity. And the option, and you must opt out. You don't get to opt in. In thinking about family empowerment, as I understand, many parents do not understand Common Core. It was explained to us quite briefly some years ago as we're transitioning to it, but we need to teach them as well. Because if we're going to rely on our parents to help our students, they need to understand what it is that they're supposed to know to assist them. And so I'm going to suggest something novel. Maybe it's heretical, but I'm going to suggest we contemplate a plan which requires parents to opt out of being trained to help their children rather than opt in. And if they don't respond, then we follow them until we get an answer yay or nay. And if they say nay, we don't want to do it, well, their child still has a face in our district, and we must pursue all the tools that are available to us to allow them, to assist them to succeed. At least contemplate that. And it's going to be, I can see it's going to be troublesome, it's going to be expensive, but you know, we need to continue to do something different if we're contemplating a change in the results.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you.
Member Cochran.
Member Wu, that's a wonderful idea. And I'd like to address this to our board attorney and ask a question. Why can't we have an opt-out for participation for parents on K through 6 in parent-teacher organizations or support of the school? Why can't we have this in middle school for parent-guardian participation in the support of the school? It is very frustrating for some school sites that struggle to get meaningful parent engagement, parent education, parent participation. Is there anything that precludes us from setting up a structure like this?
It depends on the program. Some programs allow opt-out, some are opt-in. So I can check on that with regard to the particular program.
I appreciate that, and I'd like that to be looked into, if possible, by the academic department. And I know it's extra work, but Member Wu, that's an excellent idea, and I'd like to see that applied when we can do it in other structures that we have to improve participation in programs. I also have a specific question. Do we have any plan right now, or are we going to have an African American Black task force about student achievement, particularly to address Mr. Pinkston's request? Are we going to do that, or are we in process of doing that?
So we're currently not in the process of doing that. To Board Member Ryan's point about ensuring that within the work that we're doing, the graduation task force, that we articulate how that work will be in support of students, our African American students, our students of color, our special education. I mean, there's the demographics where our students are very much underperforming. Like the things that we do within that graduation task force need to speak to that. So we don't currently have a plan for a separate task force, but that is at the forefront of the work that the graduation task force will do.
I understand that, and I appreciate the work that you're doing, and I myself would, in a perfect world, not like to aggregate out groups to give special attention to, but I call that we have that task force created here in this district, because there is an important need historically to support this group of Americans to have success. And if we're getting calls from the Black Parallel School Board and committees out in the community to make this happen, we need to make it happen. And I'm asking that you do, and that the superintendent seriously consider getting this done as soon as possible.
Might I also add that within the work that we are doing under Superintendent Aguilar's leadership, the data system that we are working within, I think allows us a way of disaggregating data in a way that allows us to provide more focused attention on what's happening with our demographic groups than we have ever had. And so, just highlighting and being able to see the system and how the system is impacting those groups, I think is just a major shift for us as an organization.
I agree, and I appreciate, and perhaps the request is not particularly a data request that's coming from the community. It might even be more anecdotal, but attention needs to be paid because success is not happening. And everything that we do to make that happen is a positive move. And if a task force is being asked for by the community, can we make that happen? And that is a question.
Let me interrupt, because I want the process to be done correctly, and you're not doing it correctly.
Well,
so
I'm asking a question.
I don't want to be rude, but let me say we don't make policy on the fly, and we make requests, and we ask people to report back to us. That would be the proper way to do this. It's not fair because one person has asked for one thing for us to mandate that happen without the board considering that. So let's do it in a proper process. I'm all in favor of what you're trying to do, but I'd like it to be done the proper way.
Thank you
That's
for your
fair.
input, and I will continue with my comments. And I am making a direct request that you provide information about why that is or is not happening. I'm not creating policy. I'm making a direct request for information. And I appreciate your input, but please do not interfere with a questioning from a board member that's asking for information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, let me continue that first, we need to do things in the proper process. So that's the right way to treat staff and to treat fellow board members. So let me just.
Oh, I agree. Are we continuing the conversation? Because if you want to talk to me one-on-one, we'll take it after the board meeting. So address it to the meeting and proper meeting per function. Thank you.
Well, try to be professional, and then we can all do that together. So, because I want to be supportive of staff and try to make things happen in a constructive and positive manner, and that's what we're all tasked with doing. So I want to be just fair about that. So my question, when I look at the data, obviously it's shocking and surprising that we're so far behind both the Sacramento County scores and neighboring Elk Grove School District scores. And, I look at our motto on the back here that we use for our LGBT students of no time to lose. There's obviously no time to lose for anybody who's not scoring well and not able to be successful as a student, because every lost day is a lost day you just really can't make up. So I think the reasonable question to ask would be, why do you think we're so far behind our neighboring districts in our past performance, which can help us create the proper, way forward of how we start to correct that situation?
I think, the reasons for the performance, there are a myriad number of reasons for the performance. And I think part of it, the work that is underway, is like seeing the system and what's producing the results. It's the analysis of what's happening and peeling back the data, getting down to the students by name, and what are the inequities that are producing this. I will also say that in the slide that showed the comparison of the district against neighboring districts, I think that's neighboring districts, meaning districts within the region as well as across the state, is opportunity for us to also, we're in partnership with many of those districts, Long Beach, Garden Grove, through various collaboratives that we're in, to find out what are the practices that those districts are engaging in that we may bring and use to shift performance in our district. So it's something that we are absolutely looking at, without being able to say these are the 5 things that are impacting this. It's a very complex set of issues that impact achievement.
I assume this is obviously an item that deserves much more attention, and more of our time. And I'd like to ask, that I know at a future meeting and when we discuss that, it'd be illuminating for us to hear what are some of the other districts doing that are more successful for us. Likewise, I like Mr. Pinkston's idea of a task force, particularly other school districts are looking at it. That would be something that I'd also appreciate hearing back from the superintendent and staff about what would be your recommendation on that. And then we can consider that in an orderly fashion. This is an information item, so seeing no other board member comments, thank you very much for the information. Very
Thank you.
important. Okay, we are on item 9.2. Ms. Allen.
Good evening, President Hansen, members of the board. Thank you for having us here tonight. I am Michael Watanabe. I am chair of the District School Bond Oversight Committee. I'm here with my co-chair, Maria Harlow Sullivan, and another parent of the school district, and Terrence Gladney. So why are we here tonight? Part of the district's responsibility is back in 2012, the voters of the district approved propositions Q and R, which provided about $400 million in bond authority to the district for its school construction program. Is approved under the authority allocated by Proposition 39, which requires the school district to have annual financial audits, performance audits, and have a bond oversight committee, which is what we're here for. Statute requires you to have 7 members, of which we are 3 of them. I'm a parent of a child in the school district. My son attends Sutter Middle School and Sutterville Elementary School. And Maria and Terrence both are parents of school districts, or kids in the school district. The committee would like to thank the district support staff listed here: Kathy Allen, Jim Dobson, Elena Hankard, Amari Watkins, Crystal Hoff. Your school district staff coordinate all of our meetings. They work with principals to arrange site visits with us. They provide us numerous financial reports, do our meeting handouts, our agendas, basically everything related to committee, all our staff work. We're very appreciative of them. They exhibit a lot of patience. They answer all our questions, regardless of whether it's in scope of our work or not. They're very quick to answer and very responsive. So we do appreciate that a lot. It makes our work easy. So where we're at today, Measure Q is $346 million bond. To date, well, as of June 30th, the district has sold about $258 million of that. Expensed $109 million, and to be expensed another $160 million or so. In Measure R, $68 million was approved by the voters. $37 million has been sold so far. Of that, $24 million as an expense, and $12 million is to be expensed. We've had 4 meetings. We meet quarterly since our last report about October last year. Each month or each meeting, district staff provide us up-to-date progress on all the district's projects that have to do with these 2 propositions. Meeting dates are on the slides. What we've been doing in addition to our meetings, wherever possible, we meet at school sites so we can see firsthand for ourselves what work has done by the district. This year, we've hit Washington Elementary and William Lanham Elementary so far. All our meetings are at night, so the pictures are dark, but First site we visited this particular school year is Washington Elementary School. This is a STEAM project. District spent $4.6 million on this project. This school was closed prior, down in the recession days when enrollment was down. District reopened it, as you know, last year with a focus on STEAM. When we tour these school sites, we look at everything the district's done. We walk around the campus, we go in the classrooms. In this case, signage was a big part of this project, as well as a lot of the furniture and casework inside. I believe we have technology upgrades too. So this is some of the stuff we've seen there. The other school site we toured was William Land Elementary School. This modular building was brought in from another campus to help reduce class size reduction. District spent $3.8 million on this school site. So the findings, the district hired an independent auditor for this project, or for Measure Q and Measure R. In both cases, no audit findings and question costs were reported by the auditors, which is a good thing. They found that the district spent all of their Measure Q funds in accordance with Proposition 39 and what the voters approved. On the district's website, on our Bond and Oversight Committee site, the annual reports for both the financial and the performance audits are published. Duplicate information for Measure R, same results, no findings and no question costs. Kind of recommendations from the committee, things we're continuing to do. The committee continues to get invited to all of the core academic renovation and repair scoping meetings the district has. The staff also invites us to any facilities committee meetings. The idea behind that is that when we attend these meetings, we get kind of an upfront view of what might be happening with the funds, and if anything pops in our heads that, hey, maybe you can't spend that on the bond funds, we can speak up ahead of time. The only requirement we have is that if we have kids at that particular school site that's being discussed, we opt out of those particular meetings. And then we intend to do continued site visits as much as we can. We're intending to hit Theater Judah this year and another school site, which escapes me at the moment. In summary, all of our meeting notes, agendas, any financial reports review, they are published on the Bond Oversight Committee website. All our meetings are public. Anyone can attend. They are published also there. Questions?
Do we have, first we would have comments from the public.
Yes, we have 4 public comments. If you could line up in order, please. Come up when you hear your name. Delaney Garcia, Ryan Peterson, Serena Rayner, and the Hiram Johnson football team.
President Hansen, I believe that our public comments were intended to go after Ms. Allen's brief.
I'm sorry.
I believe that our public comments were intended to go after Ms. Allen's next piece, because she has a 5-minute section after this, correct?
No, there is no next piece.
According to the agenda as published, it's kind of confusing.
Yeah, it is confusing. It seems that there was an error because it does not say Bond Oversight Committee, so I apologize. I was unaware of that myself.
Okay.
So
that was our intended time to speak, was after the Facilities Committee.
And I see there's not going to be a Facilities Committee.
There won't be a separate one. I mean, this would be the facilities report for this month. It just happened to be the Bond Oversight Committee, and I apologize for the way it got listed on the agenda, but perfectly appropriate for the group to talk during this event.
Or otherwise I can...
Order again, sir?
Well, since you're there, we'll just go right ahead.
Superintendent Aguilar, Board President Hansen, members of the board. I'm going to start by using some words that I saw in a presentation a few minutes ago. The Sacramento City Unified School District core values. We recognize that our system is inequitable by design, and we vigilantly work to confront and interrupt inequities that exist to level the playing field and provide opportunities for everyone to learn, grow, and reach their greatness. So one of the big things that Hiram Johnson has a stake in right now, and you can see by the wall of warriors behind me, is that we're searching for exactly that, a level playing field. Literally, we're searching for a level playing field. We have a huge buy-in in this. We have Measure Q funds that were approved at $10 million. We did the master plan. We've heard that there's come out. We know some funds went to McClatchy's field, which they now have, or closing in on having an all-turf field, all-weather track. That leaves Hiram Johnson High School as the only facility, comprehensive high school, in Sacramento City Unified School District that does not have an all-weather track, does not have an all-weather playing surface, does not have an all-weather surface for our physical education classes, does not have an all-weather surface that is playable or safe for any of our sports. Our new principal has reinvigorated our energy. We have sought the support of the Restore the Roar movement from McClatchy. They are supporting us in our measure. We are asking for no less than the remainder of the funds for Measure Q. We want our facilities to be safe, equitable, and even with those throughout the district. We just had our homecoming football game at Rosemont. I don't know when the last time you were at Rosemont High School was. Their facilities are amazing. Their snack bar is amazing. They let us plug our snack bar that we hosted out of a pop-up into their snack bar. That's just inequitable. We need to have that fixed. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And as you can see, we don't intend to flood you with comments tonight. We just want to show force.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Janae.
My name is Delaney.
My name is Lisbeth. We stand here tonight as athletes, students, softball players, baseball players, football players, etc., to ask the board to consider being equitable to the students of Hiram Johnson High School.
At Hiram Johnson, students are perceived as less than the average school in our school district. We believe that we are more than we seem. We are bright, educated, and hardworking students who really want to have a level playing field as other individuals. Our main issue pertains to equity rather than inequality, and we hope that one day we can all be treated fairly.
We have a question for the board. When the other 4 comprehensive high schools have the facilities they have, should Hiram Johnson only get 1/5 of all the allocated money? If you're being equal to all comprehensive high schools, then 1/5 would be fine. But if we're being equitable, then we believe Johnson needs way more than 1/5 of the $10 million. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Serena Rayner, and I am Hiram Johnson's student body president. This year, the ASB class's main focus is creating culture and climate around our school spirit. However, we don't have the resources or the access. This past Friday, we held our homecoming rally and our football game. During the rally, we created an environment a positive environment, and our students were enjoying themselves, only to be disappointed later when we had to break the news to them that our homecoming football game was not going to be played at home because we don't have a home to play on. Instead, our game was hosted at another school, which is Rosemont High School. Yes, the money should not be divided equally. It should be divided equitably because Hiram Johnson has the greater needs of all the other schools. Hiram Johnson is the only school in the Sacramento City Unified School District to not have an adequate home facility for football, for baseball, for softball, soccer, track, and field. Hiram Johnson has a reputation of being a ghetto school because we have poor facilities that have not been kept up to date. Less than 6% of our population is made up of Caucasian students. Among those students are Eastern European immigrants who are an at-risk population as well. So what you're telling us, even if you don't mean to, is that if we are not a school that has a significant amount of white students, we don't matter. That's the message we receive. Our students deserve to have the opportunity to be given the resources they need in order to gain the full high school experience and to also feel valued. Once our students feel valued, then not only will they be involved, they'll be willing to show their warrior pride. As a senior here at Hiram Johnson, along with the rest of the class of 2018 and with the ASB's class, it is our obligation to leave a legacy of advocates now for the rest of our Hiram Johnson students in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rajay Johnson, senior varsity football captain. We've been here before over and over, and yet other schools continue to receive priority. We get told that funding will be allocated based on need, but McClatchy's fields have already been addressed. The former presenters were talking about the achievement gap and African Americans and Hispanics falling further behind. If you really believe in change, if you truly believe, then you'll put your money where your mouth is and end the internalizations of low self-worth on urban school campuses like ours. If you keep telling us we are less than, then that's what we'll continue to be. Just demonstrate you believe we are worthy, and we will rise to that expectation. I, as a representative of the Hiram Johnson student body, will continue to make appearances at school board meetings until the issues are addressed. It shouldn't be necessary, but if need be, I'll continue to return as an alumni until the so far unfulfilled promises are put into action. Thank you for your time.
Right. Thank you very much. I very much appreciate your comments, and we have several of the school board members have questions and comments. Are there any more public comments, Mr. Barrios?
No.
All right, so now it'll be time for the board members' comments and questions. First, Member Pritchett.
I'm on it tonight, pushing my button fast.
Good job.
Okay. I am the facilities chair. And I have a few comments. First off, the comments about you being less than, that we see you less than other students is surely not true. Look at you. You are all standing up here. You're all very well spoken, and you stand strong. Don't ever think that of yourselves. The Measure Q money that we have, that we set aside, the 7.5, that's Measure Q, right? Am I misspeaking? Measure Q, it was 10 million total. There's 7.5 million that is left of that money, okay? That money will not be divided equally amongst all schools. Myself, Member Ryan, and Member Minnick, we all sit on that committee. And we've asked the facilities department, Ms. Kathy Allen, which she is working with, a company that has done an assessment of all 5 of our comprehensive high schools to develop a report of the needs and what the costs are and what are the highest needs and what are the lowest needs. So it is our job to go through that and figure out for each school site, what are those needs and what can we take care of now? I believe that report should be done in about a week, correct?
Actually, I just got an email that'll be delivered here by end of day tomorrow.
End of the day tomorrow. So we will be scheduling an emergency facilities committee meeting, which I will let your teacher and your principal know about. And we will be discussing and to figure out what those needs are and how we can spend the additional money. And I'm sure we know what your school looks like. We've been there. We've toured your facility. I drive by all the time and look at the football field and think we've got to do something, right? We understand. You are valued and we're working very hard. You have to know that we are your advocates. We are looking out for you. I do want to ask Miss Allen to come up because there is a preconceived notion that some schools have already started and there's money already being allocated. Can you please explain to the crowd of why the McClatchy Field has started?
So the McClatchy Field was able to move forward because we had an architect on site already. It was a pretty easy, very quick plan to get through DSA, the Division of State Architect. The carpet or the field was the right colors. I know it's also Hiram Johnson's colors. And it was a renovation of the existing track and field. So it was just a pretty quick, easy thing. We were able to get it done before October 31st. To start any other school, whether it had been Hiram Johnson or any other school, we wouldn't have been able to get anything done before school started. So, well, or before soccer started. So the focus was on let's get at least one done, and then we'll bring the report back to the Facilities Committee, rehash what that looks like. As you mentioned before, you wanted information on prior bond funds and how they were expended at each site, so we have that for you as well. So we'll be ready to make some decisions very quickly.
Great, thank you for that explanation. I invite you all to attend our facilities meeting. Please let us know ahead of time if you're all coming so we can make sure that there's enough room for everyone to be there. And in fact, we should probably host it at possibly Hiram Johnson. That way we could sit in their cafeteria and have this discussion in the evening, so that way parents and students can attend. But please know that we are advocating for you. You're not forgotten, okay?
Member Cochran.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank Member Pritchett and the Facilities Committee and Ms. Allen. I know that the work that they are going to do when they get that information tomorrow is going to be sincere and heartfelt, and they're not going to ignore true need. As most of you probably know, I am your representative, and if I were in charge of the world, you would have had your stadium and your much-deserved field done very quickly. But things get complicated when adults start to struggle over money issues. They just get complicated, as you probably know in your own family. So it is not something that anybody here on this dais has wanted not to happen. We all want it to happen. I am extremely proud to be your representative, and I am so impressed and so grateful that you've come here tonight and shown your intellect, your steely reserve, and your never say die attitude. You are warriors. You are warriors of Hiram Johnson, and I am extremely proud to be your representative. I will continue to do everything I can. I do ask you to have faith in the Facilities Committee like I do to do the right thing for Hiram Johnson. Thank you, warriors, for coming tonight.
Member Ryan.
Thank you. You, as youth who were speaking tonight, had such incredibly powerful voices, and I want to just appreciate the fact that you have continued to, in a very courageous fashion, call out the inequities as you see them and back it up with data and really strong information that shows the maturity of the arguments that you're making. I appreciate that my colleagues on facilities and I have been talking about how do we ensure that you get the adequate resources necessary to meet some of the concerns that you discussed tonight. But the reality is, even with the assessment and the $10 million division, let's say you were to get a disproportionate share of those monies. You were to get a lion's share of those monies as opposed to the other high schools. It is still inadequate to meet demand. And so if we're talking about budget as being a statement of our values, what we have to recognize is that there have been, for a long period of time, more than a decade, inequities that have existed, that have continued to exist, that have allowed your facilities to erode in the fashion they have. So you cannot let off after your budget allocation. You have to continue to apply pressure with us and others so that we continue to put our money where our mouth is and truly see facilities through an equity lens.
I'd also like to thank you for coming. I think that like many of us have probably had the experience in our lives back when we were in your position about inequities and things that were happening and things that didn't seem fair. And the first part of the process is standing up for yourselves and educating yourself about the process and learning how to make things happen in this democracy. All of us up here are volunteer citizen school board members. We're just like you, and someday some of you will be sitting up here too and continuing your volunteerism as a school board member, or maybe a council member, or legislator, or something else. But you've taken already a step towards that. I'm really proud of the work that the Restore the Roar folks have done at McClatchy. They did not know what the process was to change their facilities. They also do not have a football field that they can call home. They play at another place and have for the 70 years they've been around. So they feel part of your pain. And they also had a very unsafe field, and they were able to work together and to bring that to fruition. And it took this board several years to come up with even a separate pot of money to start working on the fields. And it was a long process, and frankly, there have been many, many years of neglect. And the school board members that you have in front of you have taken this issue really seriously. There never was a facilities committee that even existed before the folks at this board created one. There was never a pot of money that was set aside to look at the fields. So we have a lot of work to do and a lot of catching up to make sure that we address these issues. And I think that you can learn a lot working together with the other community folks. And I appreciate you very much coming up and eloquently presenting your viewpoint. Another thing you're going to learn is you have to keep coming back, and you're going to have to keep pressuring people like us or other people who might be here. You know, board members come and go. You know, and I hope that we can work quickly on getting this worked on. But I can tell you that it's a lengthy process. It takes a year to design a new field. It takes time to build the field. So it may be a year or two, but the legacy that you're going to leave behind, a mighty warrior legacy, when you get this accomplished, because you can, if you are dedicated to making it happen, and you've got our commitment to making it happen, it will happen. And you can look back on pride with the students who are able to use that, who are going to be following in your footsteps, that you left something behind that they're going to be able to enjoy, and it's going to make their experience better for decades to come. So I very much appreciate you being here. We need to hear these kinds of things, and you're going to need to continue to talk to us. You're going to need to do what you're doing tonight, the rest of your lives, and a lot of other places too. So, you know, we're all about lifelong education, and you educated us, you know, with your passion, and you educated yourselves too. So I appreciate that very much. And I think Member Ryan has a closing comment.
Very quickly, there is an opening on the State Board of Education for a student representative. Liz Guillen, can you stand up and just put your hand up, because I want students to be able to come to you. Wouldn't it be amazing if we had a student representative from Hiram Johnson with your experience and your voice on the State Board of Education? So please reach out to Liz Guillen if you're interested. I heard from at least 2 or 3 speakers that I think would be phenomenal candidates. You are change agents, and to have a platform at a state level to make your voices heard could be a game changer.
Wonderful. Well,
we give them thank you for serving
on
the BOC.
Yeah,
they do a lot of hard work. Kind of got stuck up here. Sorry about that.
So I'll tell you, the folks who sit on the Bond Oversight Committee, even just a little background, every school district that has a facilities or bonds are required to nominate people from the public who are willing to serve as a bond oversight committee. And these 3 fine public servants here are part of a larger group that are member activists in our community that are willing to do that. Thank you very much for your dedication to doing that and helping make sure that we're spending the money properly. And I'm very proud that the Bond Oversight Committee has taken their job very seriously and expanded what we used to do with that committee, and I think it's made it a lot more relevant for you to participate and volunteer time, and it helps increase the accountability for the district as well. So thank you very much for your service. And seeing no other comments or questions, we will move on to the next item. So thank you very much. We are now on the consent calendar, item 10.0. Do I have a motion for the consent calendar?
So moved.
We'll see you again. All right, good. We have a motion. Do I have a second? All right, I'll second the consent agenda. All in favor? Oh, all right. Did you? I'm sorry I missed that. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All right. The consent calendar has passed. We are now on communications. I think this will go quick. 11.1. Do we have anyone from CSA? SCTA? SEIU? Teamsters? UPE? Very well. We're now on the Parent Advisory Committees. Community Advisory Committee. Do we have anyone? The DLAC Committee. The Local Control Accountability Plan Parent Advisory Committee. Very well. We are now on the Superintendent's report. Mr. Aguilar.
I am here, President Hansen. Thank you.
You're welcome. Back on calendar.
Yes, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. As you know, last week I completed my first 90 days as your superintendent, and I'd like to use this particular report to share some key milestones that we have reached as a district in partnership with all of our staff and other stakeholders. I first want to acknowledge all of the teachers, staff, parents, and community members that I've had a chance to meet personally since July 1st. I said this, and I'll continue to say that my wife, my 4 children, and I could not have asked for a friendlier community to be part of than Sacramento. And I want to thank everybody from the bottom of my heart. You heard today, this was the 3rd consecutive board meeting in which, because of the board's commitment to spend more time on student achievement, staff presented information about student achievement data. And obviously, it does raise this tension between increasing the focus, knowing that some of the data that we are producing is not fun to see and it's not acceptable to see. With the fact that these data have been produced for a long time, perhaps, and that we don't want to fall into the trap of solutionitis and assuming that the solutions are going to be quick. So we appreciate the board's patience, but also the strong signals that the results that we are producing are unacceptable. And that means for all students, including African American, special ed, and other students represented by subgroups. I also want to make sure that I mentioned the fact that we held our 2nd graduation task force meeting, and I want to thank all of the staff and all of the graduation task force members involved in the task force. This is a group that's working very diligently so that they can produce initial recommendations by the December board meeting. And I want to continue to thank every one of our task force members. I also want to let you know that we cannot do enough, but we will try to do more in recognizing the valuable contributions of all of our employees in Sac City, which is why this morning I joined Member Pritchett and Member Cochran to recognize the Teachers of the Year in Sacramento County. Member Pritchett and I were at Rosemont, and we surprised Miss Rebecca Siegert McGill, who was named a County Teacher of the Year and is advancing to the state level, state competition. And we think that she has a great chance of being named the State Teacher of the Year and represent Sac City. And Member Cochran and I then went to Sutter and also visited another County Teacher of the Year, Miss Elizabeth Henriksen, and then had the opportunity to visit some classrooms as well with Member Cochran, who mentioned to our students that she too was a student at Sutter, and at one particular classroom even pointed to the seat, the desk that she sat in a number of years ago. I will continue to say that we've reached the 90-day milestone, and one thing that is clear in my mind is that we cannot and will not succeed alone, which is why I've been very inspired to see the level of community engagement that is fully supportive and willing to take on some of the burden and responsibility to achieve shared success. And in that spirit, I want to thank a number of groups. Last week, I was joined by Member Wu and Member Ryan and Member Vang at the Sacramento ACT Town Hall, which was a wonderful event hosted by Sacramento ACT, the Black Parallel School Board, Hmong Innovating Politics, and other organizations. And I had the opportunity to speak about our vision for Sac City, but also answer questions that were raised by those in attendance. Finally, I want to announce that we are working on organizing a series of wellness fairs. And the first one will take place in Member Ryan's district, and we will share further information in the next weeks. But also, I'm looking forward to spending time with board members at meet and greet forums, starting with Member Minnick on October 23rd, along with Councilmember Eric Guerra. This is the beginning of our efforts to build on our district's rich history and our strengths, and I want to work with our community to make our district even better for the students that we have the honor of serving every day. So thank you, President Hansen.
Thank you very much. No president's report. Student member report.
Since the last time we met, the Student Advisory Council has been working on the final part of our conference. It's going to be from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Tuesday, the 14th. It's going to happen in this room. We're really excited. We're expecting 120 students, staff, chaperones, and volunteers for the event. It's our youth leadership conference. We're really excited. Also, the state student board member applications are due October 12th, so that's in exactly a week by 5 o'clock. I sent it out to all the advisors at the different school sites in which we have contact with. I'm also considering reaching out to the ASB presidents and seeing if they have different people who they think would be great for that. I went to the graduation task force meeting last two days ago, and we're discussing setting up a focus group at Hiram Johnson and perhaps Wilsey Wood in order to get student opinion on what could be improved in terms of graduation. That's all.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. We are on to board members. We have Member Cochran.
Thank you, President Hansen. I, too, was really proud and pleased to go to Sutter to recognize Teacher of the Year, and I'm sorry that I missed the Rosemont one. And next year, wherever they are, I'd like to go to both of them, because it's just an exciting thing to see the thrill the students have when all the kind of big shots walk into the room. So it was fun. We're happy to report that Hiram Johnson has a small but growing interest in environmental education. And on the 23rd of September, 40 students went to celebrate the coast. I accompanied them, and we had a wonderful time and learned a lot about a lot of coastal restoration and cleanup efforts. They plan to attend the Bureau of Land Management symposium at Sac State to investigate jobs, and I'm happy to report that through working with the Assets program and Emily Belko and other teachers that are teaming up, I'm hoping to grow the interest in environmental education at Hiram Johnson. One of the many things that I continue to do to support the school, and I can't say again how proud I was to see the Warriors here tonight, and I look forward to big changes coming to Hiram Johnson. Thank you.
Board Member Pritchett.
Thank you, First Vice President Ryan. I just wanted to take a moment and thank all of the staff that was behind recognizing our Teachers of the Year. I know that that was a lot of work for you. And also thank you to our superintendent. He was graceful at Rosemont High School, and he even got to play the reporter on Good Day Sacramento because they showed up with a camera and hooked him up, and away he went. And he was just a natural. I hope they don't try to steal him away from us. Last, I just wanted to remind all of our board members, since we won't have another board meeting in October, that I hope that you will be joining me at the Parent-Teacher Home Visit Project conference. That I think it's the 26th through the 28th of October here in Sacramento.
Wonderful. Thank you, Board Member Pritchett. Board Member Minnick.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate Superintendent Aguilar's mention of the kind of meet and greet event that we're hosting in Area 4 on October 23rd at Hiram Johnson, at West Campus High School in the library. We're going to be just having kind of a casual opportunity for folks to come and meet the superintendent. I guess he's still new. He's still the new superintendent. But a chance to meet him in a kind of casual atmosphere and ask questions and get to know him. And so you don't have to be an Area 4 resident or student, but any students and parents and community members that want to come and chat with us will be welcome. It's again October 23rd, 5:30 in the West Campus Library.
Thank you, Board Member Minnick. Board Member Wu.
Thank you, Vice President Ryan. So I just want to remind everybody that Kennedy High School has been selected to represent California in Washington, D.C. in next year's Memorial Day Parade. So they had a kickoff last Friday whereby I was able to present $1,000 check to the Sacramento City Unified School Board Foundation. That money was going to be pledged to help kick off the fundraising event for Kennedy High School Marching Band. And I knew that they needed it because they were selling ice cream at $5 a scoop, and that's a lot of ice cream to reach 300,000. But as a result, I'm proud to say that Councilmember Jennings decided that he would kick in, pledge $1,000 of his own money as well as $1,000 from his discretionary city council fund. So they're at 1% on the way to Washington, D.C., and I'm making this announcement so in hopes of others will join us in helping to get Kennedy High School not only representing Sac City Unified, but the whole of California in Washington, D.C. at next year's Memorial Day Parade.
Thank you, Second Vice President Wu. Board Member Cochran.
So I've already had my say, but I'd like to piggyback on Board Member Wu's comments. Kennedy High School marching band is a legend. And when I was going to school in Sac City, they were so good. Sometimes our knees would shake if we had to go to a band competition with them. I had the pleasure to write a small community newspaper article about their effort to make it to Washington, D.C. to this event. And I'd like to share some insider information. I think we all should be supporting Member Wu and this effort to get them there. And keep in mind that Member Wu's brother once played the tuba in the band.
Wonderful. Thank you, Board Member Cochran. So a couple quick updates that I want to share. We are working in partnership right now with the California Endowment in co-hosting 2 screenings of Dolores Huerta's new documentary, Dolores. We're looking at November 17th. Details will be forthcoming, but likely at the Tower Theater with 2 400-person showings. And we'll be co-hosting with community members, labor partners, and others in hopes that they will come out and hear more about this legendary woman's historic contributions to the labor movement. We'll be sharing those details as they're solidified. In addition to that, I know that our superintendent talked about the health and wellness fair that we'll be doing on November 4th. We are figuring out the route, but we're hoping that there will be several opportunities for surrounding schools since they're fairly concentrated along Martin Luther King to participate. I think it's very fitting that we're doing a wellness fair at a time when the community has experienced such sustained and outrageous levels of death and trauma. And I think that this message of hope and resilience will be so important to a community that feels disenfranchised in many ways. And with that said, well, I am very saddened to end my board report on a low note. I think that we cannot let a life lost go unnoticed. Last week, I'm very saddened to share that a friend of our families, a friend of my husband, my children's, and boys on our block, Tamir Williams, was killed, a Sac High student who was only 15 years old. I attended 3 nights of vigils with hundreds of students who expressed their sorrow and hope that we would rally around our youth so that they could have a better life and have opportunities. And in that spirit and in recognition that Tamir Williams is more than just a statistic, he had a 1,000,000-watt smile and was loved by so many in our community. I'm going to be launching a series of youth-led community dialogues beginning in Oak Park. And so I'm hoping to work with our community partners and our board to support that effort so that our youth are empowered, much as they were in the vigils, to share their sorrow, but further empowered to talk about solutions and leading those courageous conversations. Thank you. So at this time, we'll move over to item 11.7. Yes. Oh, do we have public comment? Okay, we have 1 public comment on this. Oh, looks like we might have 2.
It's me.
Okay.
It'll be really quick. I was going to jump in on your conversation real quick. I'm Maria Harrell-Sullivan. I'm an active parent. I'm currently president of the West Campus Marching Band Boosters, or Music Boosters, sorry. It's been a while since I've been up here. Active parent, I've done PTA, PTSO, all kinds of different schools. However, Mr. Wu brought up that he's raising money for Kennedy High School. Kennedy High School, Rosemont High School, West Campus High School are the only high schools that compete. We leave our schools, we go to different cities, we sometimes go out of state. It would be fabulous if you guys found money for us to be able to travel. Transportation is one of our biggest costs. I asked last year for $5,000 for the 3 schools, so I feel kind of bad saying it after your thing. I'm sorry, but I'm piggybacking what you guys are talking about as far as transportation for our kids. Band is an amazing program for the kids. It keeps them engaged. It teaches them organizational skills, leadership skills, and it has been an amazing thing for my child. He probably would have dropped out of high school if he didn't have band. So somehow, if you guys can find $5,000 to fund these 3 schools so we can continue to compete. I know it's nothing. It's a small drop in the bucket for that $100,000 that you need. However, it does help on our annual budget. So thank you.
Thank you. No other public comments, so we'll move to item 11.7, Board Committee Reports. We'll start with the Facilities Committee. Okay.
I think I reported on the facilities committee earlier, so I don't have another comment.
No facilities committee report?
I had already reported earlier.
Ah, very well. Was there a public comment from Karen? Ms. Sweat. Yes.
Karen Sweat, Making Sense Work. I did not come prepared to speak tonight, but I feel compelled by those students standing up here and speaking so well. And before I make my comment, I also have to remind you that we have the single most transparent district, fiscally transparent district in the state of California. And we have to thank Gerardo for this. Every month he posts 8 different reports, and I look at them all. He posted period 3, end of September. So I'm going to give you a little information just so you feel better when you go to make your plans to spend some money. In the building fund currently, as of the end of September, there was $177.7 million in the budget left after expenditures and encumbrances at this point in time, 141.1. And that's just in the building fund. I won't go through all the other funds. I do have to tell you, I tried to reconcile the expenditures with the master plan, the facilities master plan that's on the district website. Because again, this is the original source documentation. This is the money that you have available to spend. And I have long been an advocate for our committees and for our board to look at the checkbook. This is the checkbook. There's money available. There's 7 different resources in the building fund. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of them are the Measure Q, different series. There's Measure R. There's $6.5 million left in Measure R as of the end of September. Now, there's plans to spend it. I didn't bring the report. Again, the budget report would show you what the plans are. You don't even have to read text. You just can see where it's going and how it's going to be spent. And then you can monitor it. Did we spend the money the way we said we were going to? Original source documentation, there's money. Do what you need to do it, Johnson.
Thank you, Ms. Sweat. Next would be the Budget Committee. Mr. Wu.
Thank you, President Hansen. So I'd like to report that the Budget Committee met last Thursday, September 28th, and with Member Bang and myself in attendance from the board. But I want to point out, and I want to thank Gerardo and his staff, Gloria Chung, but in particular, I want to thank Lisa Hayes and Kathy Morrison for their attendance. And the reason why they were there is because one of the agenda items that we asked for was further discussion of school site councils. And the reason why school site councils are important is because, and before the Budget Committee, is because we believe that it's part of talking about effective expenditure of funds at school sites. One of the ideas that came out of it was how to make school site councils much more effective. And Member Vang and I believe that maybe some training for school site councils, individual members who plan to be on school site councils, it would aid in making them more effective. So Member Vang has volunteered to look into having a school site council training at one of her schools that we hope will be recorded and placed onto our website as a training tool for other school site councils. And we've included the notion that babysitting should be provided. We've included in the notion that maybe some food like pizza might be provided to encourage parents to come out and participate in these school site councils. So we're hoping that this campaign, and Gerardo said we may be able to use it as such, that if we succeed in this, we can use it as a case study. So I'm optimistic that that we will kick this off. I think that Member Vang will be successful in kicking this off, and hopefully we can spread it across to the schools who have ineffective school site councils. One other thing that I wanted to point out is that in our approval, the LCAP from SCOE, again, it was mentioned about the deficiency that we have in our unfunded liability, and hopefully by our first interim budget in December, we will be addressing that. So more to come. These minutes are made public after we've adopted them, so we won't be adopting them, these minutes, until the next meeting. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Member Minnick, the Academic Committee.
Thank you. So on the Academic Committee, which may be the most casual of all committees, it turns into usually just kind of a big brainstorming session and educational opportunities for those in attendance. We've been talking about growth mindset, and these last two meetings we've been pulling in and now updated data from the California Data Dashboard, and we're looking at how we can use that information in our work with the graduation task force, and also we were focusing on how we can use this data to support our EL students and ensure that they're getting all the support that they need. So we've been kind of breaking that down, and we're going to continue to do that. Our next meeting that anyone is invited to come and be part of the conversation, November 7th at 1:30 p.m., and it is upstairs in the Washington room. So if you just go up the main stairs, it's right there at the top of the stairs, and anybody can come. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Member Ryan, the Board Governance and Policy Committee.
So at our last Board Governance and Policy Committee, we had a bill brought before us from one of our labor partners, in fact, SEIU, to support AB 621 that would allow classified employees a summer furloughs fund to really provide some stability in emergency circumstances. That would be state supported, and that is going to be moving before the governor's desk awaiting signature. So we were very happy to support that on behalf of our classified employees. In addition to that, I'm proud to share that Governor Brown signed SB 54 to give additional protections to our immigrant families, including our schools, very much in line with the safe haven work that we continue to do and build out in response to the federal uncertainty. Our next policy committee meeting will be on Friday, October 27th. It is open to the public, and we strongly encourage you to participate from 1 to 3 p.m. And at that next board meeting, we will be reviewing a whole series of policies to ensure that they're in line with the protections that we're seeking to create as a safe haven school district.
Thank you. Would like to call up, we have a public comment, Ms. Guillen, on the Academic Committee.
Good evening, board members. My apologies for being late for the meeting tonight, but I found that I could wedge my issue into the Academic Committee report.
Very clever lobbying.
What I wanted to talk about was to give you a heads up, both the board as well as the public, that with the release of the dashboard on December 1, for the very first time, school districts will be reporting on local indicators in addition to the state indicators. So there are 7 state indicators and 4 local. The state has never measured these and never required districts to do these before. In thinking about what are some of the reasons for some of the academic issues, the local indicators provide a real opportunity to dig deeper, but not in a way that anybody may have ever done before. So this is definitely going to be a trial for all districts. I understand from Kathy Morrison that they're working to schedule the report that's required to the board at a regularly scheduled meeting for one of the 2 November meetings. And I would recommend that you try to get that in the 2nd November meeting so that the academic committee might be prepared and discuss it at its November 7 meeting. The 4 indicators are whether the district is implementing the state standards. Obviously, the ideal measurement for that would be surveys of teachers or administrators on how that implementation is going on a number of different standards. Another indicator is school climate, and I believe our district has been doing surveys, but there's no requirement for a specific tool, and so that's another area for growth. The other 2 are parent engagement and basic conditions, facilities, teachers that are properly assigned and credentialed, and textbooks and instructional materials. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next board meeting will be November 2nd. And I will go to our board member, Nguyen, for a motion. Motion to adjourn. And you move. Do we have a second?
I would like.
We would have an announcement by Member Ryan as we adjourn.
We are going to adjourn in memory of Tamir Williams.
Very well. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained.